Okay, so hi guys, welcome to the stream. Welcome everybody. I've got some great guests with me today, all across the Shoutcasting community, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to today's broadcast because they are the professionals. They're probably much better than I am, and so I'm going to start in my corner, top right, with Ben Sapsford. If you want to introduce yourself, Ben.
All right, so I guess I'm going first then. Just how the cookie crumbles. So my name is Ben Sapsford. May know me as Sappytron or Sappy online. Main fields of expertise are the F1 games. Done a lot of commentating for community leagues. Also done a lot of work with Microsoft and Xbox, commentating events for the Forza series, and by trade as well, also a lecturer in BTEC Esports.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to pass you over to MZ.
Hi, I'm Emma, or MZ. I am a Commonwealth gold medalist and soon to be gold medalist for Team GB next week. I also do a bit of casting for Esports Wales on their football games.
Lovely. Thank you. And over to you, Darren.
Yeah, so hi, everyone calls me Gibson, so just put me down by Gibson. I work in Rainbow Six Siege, Valorant, and PUBG. Done a lot of work for Blast with Stage 1, covering Brazil. I covered Brazil, Latin America, Asia, and a little bit of South Korea for Tier 1 Rainbow Six Siege. Worked Tier 2 for Ubisoft directly in the studio in Paris at the end of last year, and my first major event, I suppose you could call it, was the Gamers 8 Festival last year, where Whippet and I covered Siege along with Ollie and Blue for one of the biggest prize pools that Siege has ever had.
Was that a trip down to Saudi Arabia, if I remember rightly?
It was a trip to Saudi Arabia, and honestly, people say it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I hope I get to experience it again, but it's a whole different world there, and those guys are serious about esports.
Wicked. I'll pass you over to Whippet, actually. It's quite a good key into your Whippet.
I mean, basically, same stuff worked with Gibby as well. We're a duo for this almost over a year now as well. But basically, everything he said, I've been there on the other side of the casting desk, online, on studio, you name it. And, for better or for worse, you having to work with Gibby.
And Terry, over to you.
Hi, I'm Terry, aka Servitude. I'm a caster / host of British Esports Federation, which is the biggest collegiate, I guess. It's the closest that we got versus comparing to America. So colleges and schools. I think it was 5,000 players this year, and the finals are happening this weekend. Unfortunately, I can't make it, but it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. I know that Vlad, one of the talkers we're going to have in with us today, can't make it by the looks of it, but he's going up there to host it, and it's exciting. I was hoping he's going to do an Annika Rice moment with him to try and get him on the train, but it looks like that's not gone through. And then finally, over to you, Max.
Hello, I'm Max, most known as Steve F1 over on a bunch of F1 league racing commentary and stuff like that, a bit like Ben. I do shoutcasting for the Mid-Kent Mariners and also the Brig Esports on Rocket League, and I also am a college student for esports.
Wicked, fantastic. Well, it's a great panel, and I want to say thank you to you guys, first of all, for doing and spending your time with us tonight. And hopefully, I'm going to ask you some questions that are not going to be too probing, but hopefully they'll help our students and other students across the area of esports, but also people that are possibly interested in esports as to what's involved in shoutcasting, because lots of students and lots of people coming into sort of esports don't really understand what it's about. So I've pulled a few questions out the air, and also some of the questions hopefully come out of the specifications that the students will use at qualification level. So one of the ones that we want to kind of ask you first of all is, here's the question on screen, is what knowledge of gameplay, tactics, progress, and events do you need to have when you go into sort of any sort of casting? So I'm going to open it up to the floor and leave you to communicate with each other and chat with each other. Anybody want to put their hand up first?
I'll let everyone's going quiet. I would have a very, very quick anecdote, just very quickly. So I got asked because we were short-staffed we had loads of games towards the end of the Esports Federation League this year. We had like this big cram at the end where we had a north-south split, and then we've got the the nationals now, so it's a bit very different to how we've had it in the previous years. So I stepped into League of Legends. Now I'm an Overwatch caster by trade, and I've played League of Legends. I know, I'm sorry if you hate it. That's kind of like, my whatever it is. Although I haven't played it for a while, but I've played it on and off for like 9 or 10 years. So I thought I had quite good knowledge. But casting is so different. When you can know the majority of characters and heroes, you can know the majority of abilities and items, but when you're put into onto the stage and into the moment of having to shoutcast very quickly and knowing what items build into what and what tactics people are playing, it's a very different situation. So for me, that was an eye opener to me, realizing I didn't know enough about League of Legends to cast. It wasn't completely rubbish. I had a Milky Cereal, who was a fantastic League of Legends caster and who carried me big time. But yeah, I think that shows that you need to have quite a decent amount.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. It's kind of why I do sports games, because I know football, and football's easy to cast, so I sort of stick to my lane. I've tried casting. I have casted Counter-Strike, which I thought I was very, very knowledgeable in, and the less we say about that, the better. We did play Anubis. Why? I have no idea. But yeah, definitely the more you know about the game, the better your casting performance is going to be. And from working now in broadcast with Riot, the casters that Riot have, or they know the game inside out, they know the players inside out, and they know all the intricacies. So it's like, do your homework, and it will only make you a better caster.
Yeah, I think when it comes to casting, most people who dive into casting, especially at the lower tiers, they're not going to know or have this vast depth of knowledge of a game. A lot of it comes with reps and doing a lot of study, doing a lot of networking as well. That's so important when you're trying to understand the games better, particularly getting good relationships with coaches and players so they can maybe teach you a little bit more about the thinking behind what they're doing and why they're doing it. When it comes to knowledge, though, if you want to get to the very top, you need to be an SME, a subject matter expert. Now, you've got, traditionally in the past, you had play-by-plays in color, and that was it. It was black and white. Now we're living in an era where there's a hybrid model where most duos are expected to be all things to all people. So for Whippet and I, when we work together, understanding the current meta is so important, but also being able to look and say, the meta is always evolving, it's always changing, and what could be the meta for one team isn't the meta for another. You look in Siege, you look at Ninjas in Pajamas in Brazil, they play completely different style to 90% of the rest of the world, but it works for them. So knowing that and being able to point that out to the viewers is very important. And then the last thing on knowledge as well, as a caster, don't be afraid to take a breath, look at what's happening, and give your opinion on what you think is happening. And it is okay to be wrong, as long as you understand the game and where the pieces where it would make sense that what you were saying could happen. That's perfectly fine. Don't be afraid to make a mistake like that.
Yeah, I think an SME, being an SME subject matter expert, is pretty important, especially on the aspect of, at least when you get into motorsport type casting, you almost have to imagine yourself as a competitor when you're giving a lot of insights and you're giving a lot of description to an audience about what is going on. You're making the kind of predictions, things like, okay, watch his line into turn 7. He's going to go for an attack here. They're going to try and bait them out, switch positions. And it does take a lot of homework, a lot of understanding, and making those connections with players. Sometimes even being a competitor yourself who's maybe stepped out of that role or is doing a little bit of both at times, to really understand what the meta is and really understand what it is to be in that competitive situation. And that kind of insight goes a long way in terms of quality casting, in order to really give the best insights and create the best show for whoever's watching and who's maybe new or a passionate fan.
To build on that point, actually, especially when in an FPS title, if you understand how power positions work from just a knowledge aspect, and you know that the pressure these individuals can be under during those moments, you can add that depth to your commentary. So I'll talk from Rainbow Six, an area that me and Gibson work a lot in. There's a lot of areas on maps where players are basically designed to sit there and waste as much time as possible. It can be very high pressure. Might not look it on camera, but if you've played that position or you spoke to players who've done it, you can very much emphasize that and build that emotional tie that this huge pocket or this huge this very important little play has all that pressure and the round might rest on it. And it's those kind of smaller aspects as well, that little bit of knowledge that can add a lot to a broadcast on almost building from that past experience that you might not have had, but you can learn by talking to coaches or networking with other players.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going off Ben's point really here, but the strategy is, especially in motorsport, it's really important, and you got to sort of help explain that to like the viewers and everything, because overall, you see a lot of the higher quality drivers just sitting behind each other until either a pit window opens or until the final lap, and that's just pretty much all down to strategy decisions and overall actual knowledge of the game, because they know if they make a move and then there's a DRS zone or an opportunity for an overtake around the next corner, they can just be re-overtaken and lose it all. So yeah, that's something about motorsport, and also just knowledge of the game in general is massive, because I did a Valorant stream the other week for Mid Kent, and yeah, I knew the ins and outs of the game, but yeah, I didn't know too much, and I really thought that it didn't really work out well, and overall not really the greatest of streams from me.
I'd say you're selling yourself short there, Max, because I watched it on Twitch and it was very good. And no one would have known that, that's not necessarily your field. I think watching casters do their trade is quite a fascinating thing to watch, because it's seamless, and there's a certain way that you pronounce words. You build up the sort of the hype to the event or to the kill, to the goal, and that hooks people in. And I think, yeah, you're selling yourself a bit short there, Max. But it is interesting that like the knowledge part, like you say, is very important. And from someone that's never done it, it's quite overwhelming, quite daunting, because I will probably mispronounce names and mispronounce moves and make myself look like a complete noob. So my hat goes off to all of you. And what I'm going to do is move on to the next question about sort of exactly that, really, is how you keep the pace and the energy inside of your streams, inside of your casts. Because, some of these games can be quite considerably long, even if they go to like the full time. And how can you keep that pace, that energy inside of your casts?
If I can jump on this one first, I think above all else is one, as said previously, don't be afraid to breathe. Don't be afraid to breathe. Give yourself a second to collect your thoughts in order to properly pace not only the cast itself, but pace yourself. If you're constantly running on a point, you will have those high energy moments in the same way that you'll have those low energy moments. If you don't pace yourself, measure yourself, give yourself the time to breathe and the time to actually understand what's going on, then you could find yourself out of breath or just out of rhythm right when something is really kicking off. You might have someone, again, to pull on a motorsport example, I could be commentating over a really intense fight between two drivers, run out of breath just as a third driver goes for a dive down the inside of the both of them. If I don't pace myself and keep my wherewithal about me and make sure that I know what's coming up in order to almost regulate the energy, then I could leave myself really out of pocket when I need it. So it's just breathing, pacing yourself, knowing when the time is right to hype up the energy, but also know when it's time to maybe peel it back, build up a little bit of tension, so when things do get good, there's that contrast.
I think Whippet and I be good to talk on the subject, because we are high energy casters, right? Anyone who knows us, I would say we're as mad as a bag of spiders whenever we get going. Like, to us, casting is a passion. And if you want to get the energy into a cast, you have to have real and genuine passion in what you do. Too often, you'll see people who want to get into casting and they'll fake the passion, they'll fake the hype, and it's so incredibly obvious as a viewer if it's fake passion and it's real passion. So if you're really enthusiastic about what you do, that will 100% keep and maintain your energy levels. But the big thing about pace and energy is context is key. If it's a regular league fixture, like as in a league, I'm talking about a team league, not the game League of Legends, the stakes are not going to be as high as if it's a best of 3 knockout game. Or if it was Formula 1, like Ben was talking about, it's not the same as if it's the final lap on the last race of the season to win a championship. So you need to understand what the context of that game is. Now, if something really good happens in the game, by all means, give that the hype and love that it deserves, because every one of these players love having their moments, get the passion they deserve. But don't come into the first game of a season at 110 miles per hour as if it's a grand final. You gotta build the tension up. In a best of 3, Whippet and I, what we really like to do, because it's an art form, is start the tempo really slow. It's a best of 3. This could go 3 maps, so start it slow. Not every decision made on that first map is going to change the entire outcome of the game. Then when you get into map 2, that's when you start ramping things up. And if it looks like a third map is on the cards, you really start bringing up the hype that third game could happen. When you get to the third game in a best of 3, Whippet and I let the shackles off. We go all out. There's a thing that he calls all the time, and he'll talk more about it, the grand final rasp, which is what casters get at the very end of a long series, where their voice is gone, it's shredded, and you can hear the almost voice breaking in the casters. And to me, that is the best noise a caster can make when you get to that point.
Oh yeah, I'll jump quickly onto that one as well. I mean, Gibson's referencing a matchup we covered at the end of the stage 1 for Blaster 6's Brazilian scene. It was in the LCQ, and it was a team that had been an underdog all season. They came last in the group, and they're in this deep run in the LCQ, and it was exactly kind of the stories. And it was a slow start off to the cast where it was very technical. We laid the foundation. We saw on map 2 that we're going to go to that third, and on that third map, we let everything loose. And that's the point. Like I was kind of, we don't really have a lead play-by-play, but I kind of got into it because my energy is very, very high in these moments, and it's all about delivering that emotional connection on a map like that when you have such high stakes. Because if you've set the foundation, the pacing for your first 2 maps, everyone who's watching, who's been watching all that series, is there with you, and they're coming into that going, this is all down to this moment, and you can really, and that's the peak of what you're aiming for. You're not always going to get that when you pace out a game, because sometimes you're in a best of 1, it's a simple fixture. But if you can get just the right moment, and you can get right towards the end of your vocal range at the end of a long series, that's a good indicator that you'll be able to measure out your hype and pace for a very long series accurately.
That's fantastic. So that's great to sort of hear the insights of what you guys are doing, obviously, and how you deal with your competitions that you're going into. So that kind of leads on quite nicely to like the next question that we've got, which is sort of, do you watch back your casts? Do you review your casts sort of independently or as a team? And do you sort of look at how you could improve those casts and sort of analyze what work you've done so that you can then make those improvements to improve your casts and hopefully keep it more engaging for your audiences?
I think, like, especially when you're starting out and you're getting yourself used to sitting in front of a camera and watching yourself, like that's not always natural for everybody, and especially if it's your first couple of games that you're trying to cast, watching yourself cast a game can be really like awkward feeling, but it's an important process for you to be able to understand how you're explaining the game, your tone of voice as you're speaking through, get hyping up in really exciting situations, making sure you fill gaps in between the quiet moments. So I think it's an important aspect to learn, but also, you know, like I think like Ben Dillon has said before, like it doesn't matter if you make a mistake, and it's about understanding how you then shape it and avoid maybe messing something up in the future. Like I know there's a couple of times in the past when, especially in some of the college games, when there's absolute dominance, like when there's such a big skill gap, when, you know, best of 3 and it's gone 2-0 and the third map, like they're just being completely spawn camped, and it's quite difficult to keep that hype going. But there's always times when you can just make a little bit of fun out of it, keep a little bit of communication, not like mocking the players at all, but have, like, trying to hype up the other team as much as you can.
Yeah, I'd agree on that as well. Like it's the same. It's the same as every sort of aspect of gaming and esports. One, you watch it back so you can get your clips for your socials, right? You gotta, if you're gonna do the work, you may as well have the benefits of social media clips. But if you don't watch it back and if you don't try and learn from what you've done, you're never gonna really improve. So like for me, for competing, I record every game. I don't watch them all, but I watch a lot of them. And for the casting I've done, I watch them back to see, okay, I really struggled with that word, or I really struggle with this certain scenario in the game where, you know, a lot's going on, or I haven't paced myself properly, like we discussed in the last question. So I think like for anything in gaming, if you want to get, but anything really in general, if you want to get better at something, like analyze what you're doing and improve on what you've already done. And I think recording is the easiest way to do that.
Yeah, I think the whole review aspect is almost vital. One, to get used to the sound of your own voice. You're going to need it. As much as people sometimes hate listening to their own voice, myself included, it's important. It's vital, especially if you have a co-com, say a commentary partner, and the early days with them, like the early days of when you're forming that bond, forming that relationship, and how you and a commentary partner riff off of each other, especially in the community leagues. It's quite present, and it's not uncommon for your commentary partner to change on a season per season basis. And some of the lower tiers, there's a lot of chopping and changing, and where you may have a week where you have a reserve commentator step in where your regular partner isn't able to make it for whatever reason. I think review and going back and looking at it's like the pacing and knowing when the time is right to lean on your co-com, maybe you need a minute, or having a good back and forth riffing off of each other. I think it's super important to understand the rhythm that you and your commentary partner have, so that you don't have any moments like when you interrupt each other, or if you're going to both commentate over a really high energy moment, that you don't sort of stumble over your own feet in some ways.
So on the back of that, sorry guys, on the back of that, I was going to say, when you're doing your casts, a lot of them are going to be sort of in a environment like this, but Gibson, Whippet, and obviously Terry as well. When you're doing the casts over a live event, is that different to how you review what you're doing in front of an audience to what you're doing when you're just doing it via a stream that you're recording?
So in an audience, we've only really done one audience cast so far, and it was all about interaction with the crowd. You know, because they're there, you can do a lot more audience interaction, and the viewers at home will understand that as well, and it'll get picked up in the crowd by the audience noise. But and the whole idea of reviewing things, James, I think at the start it's really important you review, but at the end, well, it's not at the end, but as you get more experience as a caster, you know when you've made a mistake on a broadcast. 9 times out of 10 you do. So getting into this mindset of I have to watch that back and really mentally torment myself with that one mistake I made is the wrong way to look at it. Now when I look back at casts, it's what did I do well? Like, I'm really big on the community as a whole and how they judge you and your casting. People tell you not to look at Twitch chat when you're done. People tell you not to look at Reddit. After every high-tier broadcast I've ever done, I've watched the whole thing back with Twitch chat open. I've read the Reddit and the live subreddits to see what they're saying about me, to understand what the community likes, what the community don't like. Now, I think Whippet and I are lucky that we fell into this partnership pretty early, and the community kind of latched onto us pretty quickly. We've not had any negative feedback, but I think the mindset is always focus on the positives more so than the negatives, whether that be in front of a live audience or, you know, just a regular studio broadcast or even just a remote broadcast from home.
Yeah. Terry, you've live casted over the British Esports Champs, haven't you? Live, or
yes, we've done 2 years now. Like I said, not unfortunately this year, which is a shame. But yeah, it's a very different feeling. Like Darren said, like Gibson said, like interacting with the audience is like a whole other thing that you can do, and you can and then you just kind of feed off each other as well, especially in between games, hyping up between the downtime, between the team changeover, and but not only that, I guess I remember last year the Div 1 finals, and I think this is going back to Div 2 finals, sorry, when Susie and Gihan were streaming. And big shout out to you guys who were casting this weekend. That it was an insane game, and just pulling back from your previous question about keeping up hype, that was a best of 5, map 5, round 3 of 3, 99 to 99% of our last point. It was absolutely crazy, and they were exhausted, but they kept up that hype. And part of that was the audience, just continually feeding, because it was such a close game. So I think it does partly depend on how close the matchup is, but also how big the plays are as well. Because even in a dominating game where one team's just thrashing the other, and I saw this at the League of Legends MSI tournament. Even if one team's completely dominating, you still get the odd play from the underdogs who just make the crowd go crazy, and it's awesome because you're part of it at the same time as well. Especially if you're not casting at that moment, you might be in the audience at that time. Cool.
So when it comes to casting, obviously when you're doing it live or whether you're doing it via your PCs at home, is posture important? You're obviously ramping up the speed, you're getting to that point of hype. Some people are obviously going to be slumped over in their chairs, or they might be standing up and getting into. Is posture important when casting?
I think it's one of the most important things to bring into a show. I have a standing desk remote broadcast. It helps. Not only, I think, if you're standing up, it gives you that easier access to that energy. It lets you emote a little bit handier. And, I talk a lot with my hands anyway. Gibby probably hates it when we're in studio. I'm always throwing my hand over towards him. But it standing up and having a good posture, holding yourself up straight, presents to the camera a very confident version of yourself. And, even if you struggle with stuff like that out in the public, presenting it on camera can be such a useful thing, and it adds a lot to even what you say on a show. If you're a little bit kind of not looking at the camera directly, or a little bit kind of rolled shoulder, shrugged away, it can deflect from your point. If you carry a lot of confidence in it, can help, and it really allows you to be. I think it gives you an extra advantage, especially in a studio environment. Remote's a little bit harder because you're in a room by yourself doing it. But it's a very kind of big, important thing, from my opinion at least, to get that extra level and that extra advantage if you want to find every kind of performance point in a cast.
Yeah, it's just whatever you're doing. If you're streaming live, you want to be presenting yourself well, and standing or sitting upright gives you a higher level of energy that you can just tap into when you need it. Like when you're sitting down, you can slump, and then it may look like you're bored, and then it'll come across on the stream like you're bored, and that's the last thing you want. But I definitely, for 100%, get yourself a standing desk and stand, and you can just emote so much better, like Dylan said. And the energy levels from standing, they'll help you be more consistent, because you won't be sitting in a lull and sort of sliding into your chair and be oh, it's 12-0, yay. So definitely stand and hype it up.
Kind of a side question to that for you, MZ, is obviously you're competing. Do you ever hear the background of the caster over the top of what you're doing? Does that really if you did, does it inspire you more? Does it pick you up when you're down, or does it kind of impact you when you know that you might be getting a bit of a sort of knock on from the team that you're playing against?
Well, you're not really supposed to hear them, because spoilers, because they can be saying stuff like the other team's doing, and then you can be like, oh, okay, because it's all real time. They can say such and such is waiting around B, or has changed this tactic, and then you can hear that. So normally you have big sound cancelling headphones that you can literally hear your own heartbeat. So you don't really hear the casters until afterwards, until you're watching it back. But you hear the crowd for sure, and that gives you the energy. I think that gives. Well, I mean, I'm a performing arts kid, so I love being on stage and performing. So feeding off the crowd is another extra step for me. But you don't really hear the casters. You're not supposed to hear the casters as a player. That's why they'll have the massive chunky sound cancelling headphones.
Thank you. So little question to each one of you, and I'll obviously do it as a round robin, is to any budding caster, what tip or what suggestion would you give them that they should do to help themselves, to improve themselves? We'll start with you, MZ, as you're in the main focus, and then we'll move around to Gibson, Terry, Whippet, Ben, and then finally Max.
So just don't be afraid to do it. You will make mistakes, but that's how you'll get better. And just be consistent. Just keep going, and with time it'll get better. And as the boys will tell you, you'll find a good co-commentator who will keep you on your toes, and you'll develop that bond and that relationship. But really, it's just consistency and game knowledge for me.
Cool. Over to you, Darren. Sorry, Gibson.
Yeah, I know that Whippet and I have the exact same list, so whatever I say, he'll probably echo it. But we're very passionate about getting people into casting and improvement. So, first question every single caster should ask themselves at the start is, do I want to be a caster or do I want to say I'm a caster? Because they're two very, very different things. Because what you see on screen is 20% or less of the actual work of being a caster. Your day rate that you get paid for a gig isn't for that day. It's for all the work that you have to do up to that day to do what you do. It's the same reason why you pay a plumber their rate as opposed to just an hourly minimum wage. It's because you're paying for their expertise. In addition to that, you have to be easy to work with. You have to really want to have this opinion of self-improvement. You can't jump above your station. And what I mean by that is know your audience at all times and don't be in a call with the top of the top and say that you're as good as them, because it's about going through the ladder, respecting the ladder on the way up and putting in your reps and getting better at what you do. And because I don't want to take up all of Whippet's points that he's going to make after this, my last one is, again, never fake passion. It is so obvious when you fake it, whenever you're going like, oh, this is amazing, but you can tell straight away that it's not. So just respect the players, respect the viewers, and only give it the passion that you actually have for the game.
You say a lot of the similar things. I think it's why we work so well. We have a very similar view on this, but a couple of things that are really important to me is when you walk into that, when you decide you want to take casting seriously, kind of a mirror of what Darren said, leave egos at the door. Everyone, no matter tier 1, tier 4, they're always looking for that edge on improvement. At least in Rainbow Six, there's a very open level of communication between the top and newer casters. People aren't afraid to message you and always kind of be looking for that level of self-improvement, and don't ever, never have an ego in the space, and always have fun, because that's the most important thing. You're not there to do a corporate job. You're not there to do up your tie, your top button, and it's not really a job. It's a performance, and that's what a lot of people can sometimes miss. You're not, you're not the star. You're there to add a performance that adds to the game. You're there to emphasize and build up what's going on. You're there to make that moment magic for people. You're there to create that emotional connection from what's just a game being played on stage or on LAN to that eruption of emotion that people feel, whether it's a team that they've followed for years losing in a grand final again, or finally that young player getting the break to win. You add that moment, you add the gravitas to that, and if you're having fun doing it, it makes it so much more. And that's such an important thing that sometimes people can miss, is you have to have fun, because it's the field of games. If you're not having fun doing it, there's not much point in that.
Thanks, Whippet. Terry, I'm going to pass you over to you.
I guess from, if you want to start out, I think MC said, just do it. Like, especially if you know you want to get into games in some sort, if you definitely want to work in esports, if you're an esports student studying something at the moment, where you kind of do a little bit of everything, you do a bit of marketing, do a bit of planning, events planning, do a little bit of tournament admin, you do maybe a little bit of casting, bit of streaming, whatever it is that you're doing. That's only a tiny flavour of what it is. Gibson mentioned about the amount of work that goes into it. When you've got a big match, then you need to know like the history of the players so you can pull on their experiences or their past performance, their stats and stuff like that. But if it's still like very early on in your career, or it's something that you just want to be looking into, you just gotta do it. And like Dylan said, enjoy it. And if you start doing it and you're trying to build up your experience, and every week you're like, oh, I've got to do shoutcasting again, then just be honest with yourself and maybe go, maybe it's not for me. Maybe I should look for something else that I really want to do that's related to esports. That might not be shoutcasting, but it could be on the production side, it could be on the admin side, it could be on the marketing side, whatever it is. Don't feel like you have to be bottlenecked into shoutcasting because it looks cool, because you've got that status, because you're on camera. You can still be part of the ecosystem and be successful in an industry that you love and that you want to be a part of.
Cool. Thanks for that, Terry. Ben, what's your thoughts? What would you advise?
Well, I guess it's two main things, as MZ said, just doing it, and as Terry sort of echoed. I remember my start to my casting career very fondly, and it was literally just a ping in a Discord server. It was a Forza Discord community racing server, and it was literally just at everyone, can anyone commentate? Our main guy has dropped out. And I just said, you know what? Let's take that leap of faith. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. Let's just do it. And the rest is history. So don't be afraid to make that jump. But also, as Gibson and Whippet said, it's about the passion aspect of things. And it's about what you bring to the table. Now, you have to have a level of passion about the games that you're commentating, because it is not possible to be faked. It is very, very transparent if you try and fake that. So you may be very, very passionate about certain games, like for myself, Forza franchise in particular. And when I'm commentating on those games, I like to think that it shows through. And it is all about not only having the passion for being a shoutcaster in and of itself, goes back to that whole sentiment of, do I want to be a shoutcaster, or do I want to say that I'm a shoutcaster? You have to have a passion not only for the games that you're commentating over, to the point where it's like you understand it, you know the ins and outs of it, you live and breathe the game on the same level that a lot of the pundits and players do, but also having that passion just for yourself to get better, to be the best version of that caster that you believe you can be.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, Ben. Just before I go over to Max, if anybody's watching on YouTube or on LinkedIn, if you want to put any comments in the comment section below, these will feed through and we can pass them on to the team. So pop them in the bottom and then we can pass them over and ask your thoughts over to these wonderful guys who've got an extensive level of knowledge that might help you get into the area of casting. Okay, so I'm going to pass you over to Max and your thoughts, Max.
I mean, one thing that I found myself that helped me improve a lot was actually just in the motorsport scene, just make some basic notes on either a driver or a track that you're doing next. And it really helped me overall, mainly understand the game a bit more, also be able to just, in those dull moments, be able to carry on that sort of hype and pace and everything. And also, I feel like you take every opportunity you can get in the game that you do. Not a lot to burn yourself out, but 2 or 3 a week. That's what I do. I do about 2 or 3 different leagues a week, and I really enjoy it. And it helps me improve a lot more because I learn off different co-commentators. So yeah, it really just make some notes. I have every track so far, but yeah, just make some notes. You'll learn more about the game and more about shoutcasting yourself, and take a lot of opportunities that get thrown your way, because overall you will learn a lot more from doing it more, and you'll eventually just keep improving.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Max. So we've got some questions coming through on the chat. First one from YouTube, from Kieran. Sort of, how did you get into casting? Is it possible to do it without experience? That's open to everybody here, because obviously we've got some people that are thinking, I've seen this, I like it, I want some, what do I need to do?
Yeah, it's definitely doable without experience. Like, you have to start somewhere. You can't just be like, I'm a caster now. Have you done any casting? Nope. Like, you just jump in. The only experience you need is knowing the game, and you don't even need to know like the super, as we've discussed, like the super ins and out. Yes, it will certainly help, and it will make you a better caster. But you will get that information by consistently doing it and by doing your research. So you don't need to have experience to start. You just need someone to take a chance on you, or just like do community streams where you cast over live games and stuff like that. Because there's always you can get any sort of live broadcast you could get with just gameplay, so that the community people can cast over themselves.
Yeah, but also like if you're in college studying esports at the moment, you know, you've got probably teams playing every week. What's stopping you from just casting on your college Twitch channel, or starting up a college Twitch channel? Whether you've got like 2 people and one of them's a Twitch bot, it doesn't matter, because when you're building up that experience and you're building up that kind of history, that you can then put on your CV if you decide to go for something a little bit higher, or go for something that's requiring a bit more experience, because you can say, actually, yeah, I have done it for, you know, a term or a year or 2 years, just to a small audience. But like MG said, you need to have that game knowledge to be able to at least talk about what's happening in the game, even if you don't necessarily have all the knowledge about the different players and where they've come from and how they've built up, what their favorite characters, heroes are. So yeah, it's just getting some experience. It doesn't have to be professional, just something under your belt so that you can start to build up.
Cool. Kieran's also asked another question, kind of a probing one, is what do you do during your day, or what do you do your day to day when it comes to casting?
I'm going to say something bold here. I have a day job, and I'm not going to lie, whenever the majors are on, I have the major on my TV at all times. Even if I'm doing my day job, I'm watching. I live, breathe, eat, and sleep esports, right? It's as simple as that. If there's an event on, I'm watching it. My day job, I get my stuff done, but esports is the passion, I think. So on your day-to-day, if you have a full-time job and you want to get into casting, you will find you'll think about casting a lot and you'll think about esports. But I want to give some advice that somebody who's a full-time caster gave me. And again, I don't think Whippet and I are very far away being at that point. But it's, don't get yourself into a rut when there's nothing on and you're a full-time caster, because you could find yourself with 12 to 14 free hours every single day and you'll go stir crazy. Go make content, go do content, go network, go game. Don't let life get you down. And in addition to that, be ready for rejection. I guarantee you every single person on this call has been rejected for work, and you have to be big enough, strong enough, and self-reflective enough to understand that even if you personally think the person who got the job ahead of you is not as good as you, you have to respect the decision that was made. So be ready for rejection. It's a big part of esports.
That's why you need to get a job in esports. Work in broadcast. My job is to watch esports all day.
I was actually going to jump on that point because I'm in the very unique position of where casting and my day job have a bit of a symbiotic relationship. So the further I hone my craft outside of my day job, the better I am to teach that subject inside of my day job. And it is both a great thing and also a difficult thing, because you blur the line. And I'm sure if anyone has had jobs closely related to their passions, you find sometimes you blur the line between your work mindset and maybe like stepping away from that if it's a little bit stressful. But I would say that I like Gibson said, if there's things like a major on, like if there's F1 Esports Pro Championship playing, or if there's a particular Forza race running, you can bet that I have got that on my phone or somewhere just tucked away, just tucked away, so it's within eyeshot. Should I get the slightest moment of downtime? In terms of the day-to-day, though, if I'm not say commentating, looking at say like other commentaries, other casts within the scene, and if not that, then you're still just, as Gibson is, just living and breathing esports on the day to day, where it is my life.
Cool. Well, I want to kind of get to the point where we're going to start to wrap up the broadcast. And firstly, I want to say thank you very much to you all for your time again. It's been absolutely awesome. And it's been a while for us to get to this point. For those of you that don't know, I've been looking at doing this with these beautiful guys since February. I think I looked at doing it. So we've gone on a few journeys to get to here, and hopefully we'll be able to do some more content that will really sort of inspire, give some tips and help out students and those people that are just looking at casting in general. So from me to you guys, thank you very much. And to the audience, thank you for watching. I hope you found it really informative. And personally, for me, this is my first time of doing this sort of thing, and hopefully it went well. I didn't bumble over my words too much, but just a massive thank you. And guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. If anybody has anything they want to put it in the chat below, and we'll answer that back. I can ping it on to these guys, as we're obviously in communication. And just keep an eye out on the channel for some more content that comes, and we'll try and get these going as soon as regularly as we can. So thank you very much, and thank you guys. And I'm going to end the broadcast there, and we'll see you hopefully in the next one.